that you don't reuse or are able to wash the one plate before you use it.
Right, right. Now, when we're cooking on a grill, I know, you know, of course, some of us will like to marinate our foods. There's some special precautions, right, we need to think about if we're marinating and what we can use or not use?
Again, marinating, if you want to marinate your meats before you cook them, you want to make sure that you marinate and then leave that food in the refrigerator. You don't want that food sitting out on the counter marinating, because bacteria and the temperature of the food is going to change, which is going to cause bacteria growth.
Okay.
And also, if you're planning on using marinate after, put it on after the cooking of the food, you want to make sure that you don't use the same marinate that you're marinating the raw meat product in. You want to separate or have a little marinade on the side so you can use that after you're done. Got it.
Got it. No, you know, I guess along those same lines, you know, if we're cooking things like a pork loin or something along, or not necessarily a steak, but a larger piece of meat, can we partially cook in advance so that it saves some time on the grill, or is that generally not recommended?
You don't want to partially cook. The reason is because if you do partially cook, you're taking that food that should be at one temperature, and then you're bringing it up to a temperature that's bad. And it's sitting in that danger zone of the temperature, which is causing bacterial growth. So you want to either have it refrigerated until you cook, or you want to make sure and then cook it completely through. And then you can either re-refrigerate it and reheat if you want to.
On the grill, if you wanted to do that.
If you want to cook it ahead of time and then reheat it at the barbecue.
Got it. Got it. Okay. So we're not cross-contaminating. We're keeping things layered properly in the you know, in our coolers. How about cooking? Do you talk about using meat thermometers? Do we need to use those when we're grilling? Or
you can't tell a product is cooked properly without a meat thermometer. Just by looking at it and seeing if it's pink or if it's brown is not going to be able to tell you appropriately is if it's cooked right. We recommend that you bring a thermometer, and here's one nice to use for you, and make sure that when you're cooking, you know, we have a hamburger patty here, you want to make sure it's cooked to 160 degrees. Again, you really can't look by just saying, because the outside, especially on a grill, it's going to cook it a lot faster than the inside, and what we care about is what the inside temperature is. So you want to have a thermometer, especially if you're doing chicken or poultry or pork loin that takes a lot longer to cook. You want to make sure that the inside of the product is at a specific temperature. And again, for pork loin, it's 160. If you're doing poultry, it should be at least 165.
Now, and these are just certainly easy to use. This is one that I just brought from home, and you're just inserting it. And do you do that for a certain amount of time? Like, how long does it take for it to actually
It's relatively quick. You know, if you are doing poultry, you know, you should cook it in it. You'll be able to tell, so you're not sticking it in. Or you want to make sure you stick it in the middle and not down by the grill, because it will misread.
That's a good point, actually. So it'll be getting the temperature from the grill rather than from the inside of the meat.
So you want to make sure that when you do put it in, you're not near the grill.
Now, is it recommended that we, if you want to keep the food hot, you know, can we just leave it on the grill and avoid the risk of drying it out, or can we leave it off for a little while? What do you think in terms of keeping food warm after it's done?
Most grills have either the coals or any other the heat sources in the center. If you want to keep food hot, we recommend that you put it on the edges of the grill. That way it's still maintaining the heat from the grill, but it's not over, so it's not really cooking the product.
Now, how long can we leave these things out? I've heard varying lengths of time. You know, if we're going to have cold food out or cold salads, I mean, clearly the way you have it here, ice helps, right? Ice must help to prolong the length of time.
If you're having any kind of salads, and all these should be refrigerated. Again, if you're doing a barbecue, you don't have your refrigerator with you. So you want to provide ice packs to make sure that you keep the product cold. And ideally, you should be keeping these products about 40 degrees or below. So what you want to do is put them on ice. If the ice starts to melt, which in high temperatures it'll melt fairly quickly, you want to change it out. So in your cooler, you should have extra bags of ice. So you're continuously changing it out, because cold water is not going to be able to keep it the same temperature as ice would.
Now, you know, you mentioned another great suggestion, which was off camera, but I want to be sure we share this, about how much to put out at a time, right? And how you're just keeping the larger quantities in the cooler and dishing out as we need it, and that'll help prolong.
You want to, if you're doing a salads, and the problem is that food does not hold. If it's outside, you know, it's 2 hours is your limit that you can eat the food.
Okay.
So you want to make sure that you use smaller dishes, so when you put the food in a little bit of time. What we recommend is that you have, you know, your salads in your cooler, and then you refill it as you need it goes on, because after 2 hours it should be removed. And the thing is, you know, if the hotter it is, if it's over 90 degrees, that time actually drops to 1 hour.
Right.
So you want to make sure that either the food is eaten within the hour or disposed of. So you want to make sure that you have larger portions in the cooler, so you're constantly replenishing.
Okay. Now, another suggestion I recall you mentioning is just keeping, having separate coolers for different food items, you know, from beverages to foods. And what's the benefit of that?
The reason you want 2 coolers is because if you're going to be going into one cooler constantly, like for beverages, everybody wants a drink or water, so they're constantly going into the cooler. You want that one separate from one of your products that you're not replacing constantly, is because the temperature will change if you keep opening and closing the cooler.
Right.
So you want to make sure you keep the food as cold as possible. So you want to make sure that you have coolers to separate your foods that you're going to be going into a lot compared to foods that you're going to be holding for a longer period of time.
Right, right. Okay, got it. Now, when we're talking about leftovers, you said, you know, 2 hours is generally the rule. Are there some guidelines also that we can follow beyond that, or is it enough to just base it on time?
I think
or are there other
just
factors?
is time. You know, it's easier to say time, especially because it's not really maintaining, as much as you put ice in it, it's not going to really maintain a good temperature. So if it's not consumed within the 2 hours or the 1 hour, if it's over 90 degrees, it should be removed. You can always take a temperature and make sure that the food product stays at 40 degrees. But again, in general, it should be after 2 hours, it should be removed.
Right, great, thank you. Are there any other points you wanted to share? I think we talked a little bit about fruit and keeping these separate. Is it adequate to just keep them?
Well, with fruit, and we have blueberries here, but you can use other food. If you to clean the food properly, you want to make sure that if you have a food that has a rind on it, like watermelon or cantaloupe, is that you wash the fruit prior to it. So you just don't want to take this from the grocery store and serve it. You want to wash your fruits and vegetables prior to bringing them to your picnic. If it has a rind, you can use a brush to make sure running water is sufficient to clean all your vegetables. Just make sure everything's under the running water and your fruit. To clean it. You know,
I remember a while back, and maybe this is one of those concerns with the fruit with a rind. Is it the concern that as you're cutting through it, you may be transporting bacteria? That's the issue. Is that right?
That's the issue. Outside of fruit, they're coming from different locations, so you're not really sure what kind of products could be on the outside. They could be contaminating something.
Sanitation
So you want to basically clean all your fruit products and your vegetable products prior to eating them. And again, if you're going to a picnic, most likely you're not going to have running water, so we recommend you doing that ahead of time.
Okay. And certainly all of these things apply to, just I didn't want to lose track of utensils, not reusing utensils that have been used with raw foods, correct?
Again, we have, a spoon here, but you really should have a spoon for each of your products. So you're not contaminating taking the spoon here and then dipping in another product, especially if it's a cooked and a non-cooked product.
Right, okay, great. Well, thank you so much for joining us today,
well, thank
Nancy.
You for having me.
That was great. That was very informative. We'll be having additional information, not only what Nancy has shared today, but some other food safety items and a variety of summer safety tips on our website. So we encourage you to visit that, and that's www.middlebrookhealth.org. And we thank you for watching Public Health Matters.
A fall from a bike can hurt your brain so that you have a hard time seeing, smelling, walking, or thinking. It can really mess you up. If you're gonna ride, wear a helmet.